The chandeliers of Manhattan's Grand Aurelius Hotel glimmered like frozen constellations above the crowd. Beneath their glow, the city's most powerful financiers raised crystal glasses, their laughter echoing across marble walls. At the center of it all stood Olivia Sterling, 34 years old, blonde waves cascading over a red V-neck dress that clung to her figure with ruthless elegance. She was the youngest billionaire CEO on Wall Street, a woman whose icy stare could silence boardrooms. Near the back of the hall, a man shifted awkwardly. Daniel Carter, 36, broad-shouldered in a faded flannel shirt and worn jeans, held the hand of his 7-year-old daughter. He had not come to mingle with titans of industry. He came seeking a scholarship program for his little girl. Olivia's gaze found him, and her lips curved into a cruel smile. "A single father in denim at my gala? Do you think pity earns you a place among lions?" The room erupted in laughter. Daniel's jaw tightened, but he didn't flinch. Instead, he stepped forward, his voice steady. "Maybe it takes someone ordinary," he said, "to teach a cold queen what it means to lose." The ballroom froze. Every eye turned toward him. Olivia Sterling was not simply another face among New York's glittering elite. She was the embodiment of ambition sharpened into steel. Born the only child of a banking dynasty, she had been groomed for greatness since the cradle. At 34, she commanded Sterling Global Holdings, a conglomerate sprawling across finance, technology, and real estate. Reporters called her the Ice Queen of Wall Street. She never faltered, never forgave, and above all, never let anyone see weakness. Behind her flawless designer gowns and platinum smile, Olivia lived in a fortress of glass towers and contracts, untouched by the struggles of ordinary people. To her, sympathy was a liability, and poverty nothing but proof of failure. Yet Olivia's empire was not without shadows. Rumors whispered of boardroom betrayals, of relationships sacrificed on the altar of power. No one dared confront her, not until that night. Across the city, Daniel Carter lived in a world that could not have been more different. Once a rising mechanical engineer, his life had derailed after tragedy. His wife, Emily, had died suddenly, leaving him with a newborn and dreams turned to ash. Daniel abandoned his career, trading late-night design projects for night shifts at a repair shop just to keep food on the table. His hands, once meant for innovation, now bore the grease and grit of survival. But he never considered himself broken. Every morning, Daniel walked Lily to school, her small hand wrapped around his calloused one. She was his anchor, his reason for enduring the quiet humiliations of debt and exhaustion. At 7, Lily's curiosity and sharp mind mirrored the brilliance her father once hid from the world. Teachers whispered about her unusual intelligence, how numbers seemed to dance for her, how she solved puzzles older children could not. Together, father and daughter formed a fragile but unshakable unit. Daniel's flannel shirts and modest Brooklyn apartment spoke of struggle, yet inside that home lived more warmth than Olivia's penthouse could ever hold. And then there was Marcus Lee, Sterling's vice president, smooth, ambitious, and envious. Marcus secretly nursed desires for Olivia's recognition, for her throne, and for Daniel's downfall once he appeared. In a city built on power and pride, these lives were about to collide. Morning sunlight filtered through the glass walls of Sterling Global's headquarters, painting the skyline in hues of gold. Olivia Sterling stood at the top floor, arms crossed as she surveyed Manhattan from her corner office. The view was hers alone, an empire of steel and glass bending beneath her will. Assistants moved with hushed urgency, terrified of her disapproval. A single glance from Olivia could scatter junior executives like startled birds. She thrived on control, on precision, on the intoxicating certainty that her word shaped fortunes. Her office was a gallery of wealth, original art pieces, fresh orchids delivered daily, a desk carved from imported Italian marble. She rarely sat at it. She preferred to stand, heels clicking against the polished floor, commanding meetings like a general. To Olivia, business was war, and sentimentality was surrender. Only a few miles away, in a cramped Brooklyn neighborhood, Daniel Carter was beginning his day in an entirely different reality. His apartment was small, with peeling paint on the walls and second-hand furniture that creaked with age. Yet it pulsed with warmth. The kitchen smelled of scrambled eggs and coffee, though the eggs were powdered and the coffee cheap. Lily's laughter filled the air as she sat at the table, hair messy, working on a math puzzle far beyond her grade level. Daniel leaned against the counter, smiling through his fatigue. His shirt sleeves were rolled, his hands still bearing traces of grease from the repair shop the night before. He was exhausted, but Lily's bright eyes made the exhaustion worth it. She was the future he fought for, the reason he swallowed his pride at galas and endured stares of disdain from people like Olivia Sterling. Two worlds existed in parallel, one adorned in diamonds and ruthless ambition, the other built on resilience and love. They should never have touched, but fate was rarely so tidy. At Sterling Global, Olivia prepared for a critical negotiation with foreign investors. Her mind was sharp, her words calculated to crush hesitation. Yet, beneath her icy composure, there lingered a faint, nagging thought of the single father who had dared speak to her with such audacity at the gala. She had dismissed him publicly, but his words' ordinary teaching, the extraordinary how to lose, echoed like an unwelcome refrain. Meanwhile, Daniel tied Lily's shoelaces and walked her to school, humming softly to calm her nerves before a test. On the sidewalk, passers-by glanced at him with indifference, unaware of the storm gathering beyond his simple life. Daniel didn't know it yet, but the ridicule he endured that night would become the spark of a confrontation that could rattle Wall Street itself. The Ice Queen of Manhattan and the single father of Brooklyn, two lives, two philosophies, two worlds about to collide in a battle neither had anticipated. The morning after the gala, tabloids splashed Olivia Sterling's face across their covers. Ice Queen humiliates single father at charity ball. The headlines were designed to flatter her power, yet Olivia's eyes narrowed as she scanned the photos. There, frozen in grainy flashbulbs, was Daniel Carter, tall, broad-shouldered, his jaw clenched as he shielded his daughter from the ridicule of a jeering crowd. He was no Wall Street adversary, no titan of industry. And yet, the look in his eyes that night unsettled her. By mid-morning, Olivia was seated in a glass-walled conference room surrounded by her board. Marcus Lee, her ever-eager vice president, smirked as he tapped his tablet. "The gala played well in the press," he said smoothly. "They're calling you untouchable. That man, Carter, was it? He made you look even stronger by comparison." Olivia tilted her head, feigning agreement, though her voice cut sharp. "Stronger? Or crueler? Public sentiment shifts like the wind, Marcus. I won't have some nobody become a symbol against me." That afternoon, an online clip began circulating. Daniel's words at the gala, ordinary teaching, the extraordinary how to lose, replayed over and over. Comments flooded beneath. Some mocked him, but others praised his courage. The narrative was slipping, and Olivia hated losing control. Her solution was swift and merciless. In a televised interview, she leaned back against the velvet chair, every inch the commanding queen. When the reporter asked about the incident, Olivia's lips curved into a dismissive smile. "Mr. Carter is irrelevant," she said. "A man who squandered his career, who begs for sympathy rather than earning respect. New York doesn't need martyrs. It needs leaders." The soundbite spread like wildfire. For Daniel, watching from his small apartment, it was a dagger. Lily sat beside him, her brows furrowed. "Daddy, why is she saying that about you?" Daniel exhaled slowly, resisting the surge of anger. He looked at his daughter, his voice calm but steady. "Because people like her think they know everything. But sometimes, Lily, even the powerful need to be reminded what they've forgotten." In Olivia's world of cameras and contracts, it was nothing more than a calculated jab. In Daniel's world, it was a provocation, one he would not ignore. The Sterling Global boardroom buzzed with tension as Olivia Sterling entered, her crimson heels striking the floor like a metronome of authority. She carried herself as if the skyline itself bowed to her. But today, Marcus Lee noticed something sharper in her stride, a personal edge. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice smooth as glass. "Public perception has shifted. A single father with nothing has managed to ignite sympathy in the press. That ends today. She turned, almost theatrically, as the boardroom doors opened. Daniel Carter stepped inside, looking out of place among the tailored suits and designer dresses. His faded flannel shirt had been pressed neatly, his jeans clean but worn. He wasn't here to blend in, he was here because Olivia had summoned him. "Mr. Carter," Olivia said, folding her hands atop the marble table. "You want your daughter's future secured. You want opportunity. I'll give you a chance. But only one." Daniel met her gaze evenly. "And the price?" A thin smile touched her lips. "You'll compete against me. One deal. One negotiation. If you prove yourself, Lily will have her scholarship, paid in full by Sterling Global. If you lose, you'll walk away not just from me, but from every door in this city. No one will take your calls again." A murmur rippled through the board. Marcus smirked, clearly relishing the spectacle. "Generous terms, Olivia," he said, his tone laced with venom. Daniel's jaw flexed. He had no illusions about the imbalance of power in that room, but when he glanced at the photo of Lily tucked in his wallet, his choice crystallized. He straightened, squaring his shoulders. "I don't gamble for pride," Daniel said. "But for my daughter, I'll take your challenge." For the first time in years, Olivia felt a flicker of intrigue. Most men shrank beneath her scrutiny. Daniel did not. There was something infuriating and fascinating about his refusal to bend. She extended her hand across the table. Then, it settled. 1 week from today. A negotiation with our Tokyo investors. May the strongest win. Daniel's calloused hand clasped hers. The contrast was striking. Her manicured nails, his rough skin. Two worlds colliding in a single grip. "Strength," he said quietly, "isn't always measured in billions." The words lingered in the air long after he left. Olivia's composure never cracked. But as she drew her hand back, her fingers tingled with something she hadn't felt in years. Not fear. Not respect. Something more dangerous. Anticipation. The boardroom had been transformed into a battlefield. Screens flickered with financial charts. Translators murmured into headsets. And the air buzzed with anticipation. Sterling Global's long-awaited meeting with Shimada Industries, one of Tokyo's most powerful conglomerates, was about to begin. At the head of the table sat Olivia Sterling, her posture flawless, every strand of her platinum hair in place. She wore a tailored white blazer over her crimson dress, the very picture of icy control. To her right, Marcus Lee tapped nervously at his tablet, glancing between her and the arriving investors. Across from them, Daniel Carter adjusted his chair. He had no assistant, no presentation deck, no army of advisors, just himself. His shirt was crisp, though the collar bore the faint wear of years. His eyes scanned the room, not for numbers, but for people. The Japanese delegation filed in, led by Mr. Kenjiro Tanaka, a dignified man with silver hair and a reputation for valuing trust above profit. Olivia greeted him with a polished bow and a firm handshake. Her English introduction was rehearsed to perfection, peppered with calculated references to efficiency and dominance. Daniel waited, then extended his hand with quiet respect. "Mr. Tanaka," he said softly, "it's an honor. My daughter still remembers the origami swan one of your people folded for her at the gala." Tanaka's eyes warmed, surprised that a stranger remembered such a small detail. He nodded. Intrigued, the negotiations began. Olivia launched with her signature aggression. Flawless slides, projected profit margins, bulletproof contracts. Her words sliced through the air like steel. She offered expansion, speed, and unparalleled dominance in the American market. Her board members scribbled notes, nodding in awe. Daniel listened. And when it was his turn, he didn't start with numbers. He started with people. "Your company builds not only machines," he said to Tanaka, "but legacies, families. My late wife worked in design. She taught me something: efficiency without humanity collapses. What I propose isn't just profitable, it's sustainable, for generations." He sketched quickly on a notepad, sliding it across the table. His drawing was simple. Supply chains streamlined not just for cost, but for worker welfare. It wasn't flashy, but it was real. The investors leaned in. Olivia's jaw tightened. She countered with flawless rebuttals. Market share, quarterly gains, shareholder satisfaction. Daniel countered with patience, long-term loyalty, cultural respect, community trust. Each word he spoke wasn't polished, it was grounded. The room shifted. Board members who had arrived expecting to laugh at a mechanic in a flannel shirt now whispered among themselves, surprised at his clarity. Even Marcus, usually smug, frowned as he realized Daniel wasn't stumbling, he was winning hearts. At one point, Olivia leaned closer, her voice a whisper sharp enough for only Daniel to hear. "Do you think sincerity will save you? This is war." Daniel met her gaze. "Number. But maybe it will save you." For the first time, Olivia faltered. It was a flash, barely perceptible. But Tanaka noticed. His lips curved into a knowing smile. By the time the presentations ended, the room was divided. Olivia had dazzled with power. Daniel had grounded them with humanity. And though no decision was announced that day, one thing was certain. The Ice Queen of Wall Street had found an opponent she could not easily crush. The following morning, Daniel awoke to a storm outside his modest Brooklyn apartment. Rain pelted the window panes, drumming a rhythm that echoed his pounding heart. He had expected Olivia to strike back. He just hadn't expected the depth of her ruthlessness. By noon, the first wave hit. Marcus Lee, smirking as he always did, had leaked a story to the financial press. Single father challenges billionaire CEO, naive or brave. The article painted Daniel as an amateur, a man out of his depth, incapable of surviving in the high-stakes world of global business. Daniel's phone buzzed incessantly. Calls from minor investors, old colleagues, even strangers who had read the story, all questioning his competence. His stomach knotted. But he didn't panic. He knew this was Olivia's play. Isolate him, make him doubt himself, break his resolve. But Marcus underestimated one thing. Daniel had nothing to lose except fear. And he had everything to fight for Lily. By mid-afternoon, Olivia herself appeared not at the office, not at the boardroom, but at the small cafe where Daniel often brought Lily after school. Her entrance was calculated. Platinum hair slicked back. A red blazer, perfectly matching her corporate power. Heels clicking on the tile floor. The cafe patrons fell silent, sensing the storm that followed her. She approached his table with a cold smile. "Mr. Carter," she said, voice smooth as ice. "I hope Lily isn't distracting you from understanding the real world. Because the real world is ruthless, and I cannot allow sentiment to cloud judgment." Daniel didn't flinch. He sat up straighter, gently placing Lily's hand in his own. "I'm here for my daughter," he said evenly. "And I'll fight for her, fair or not." Olivia's smile widened, sharp as a blade. "Fairness?" she echoed. "This isn't about fairness. This is about winning. And winning requires sacrifices." Then, she struck not physically, but with words designed to wound deeper than any fist. She referenced Daniel's past failures, the financial struggles he had endured after his wife passed, the times he had nearly given up. Her words were precise, surgical. Daniel felt the familiar sting of self-doubt. But he held it at bay. He glanced at Lily, who was drawing quietly on a napkin. Her innocent trust, her belief in him, anchored him. He breathed deeply. "You think you can intimidate me," he said quietly, "by exposing the worst parts of my past. But the truth is this. I've survived everything life has thrown at me, and I'm still standing. For my daughter, I'll face anything. Even you." Olivia paused. For a fraction of a second, her eyes betrayed a flicker of something unexpected. Admiration. Not for Daniel. Never for Daniel. But for the force of his conviction. She turned abruptly, heels clicking as she exited, leaving a room buzzing with whispers. Marcus followed, fuming. Daniel let out a slow breath. The storm outside had not lessened. But inside, a fire had been ignited. The war had escalated. And both sides knew. The next move could change everything. That night, Daniel sat alone at his kitchen table, the glow from the laptop illuminating his tired face. Lily slept soundly upstairs, her soft breaths a reminder of everything he had to protect. The events of the past days had left him exhausted. But Daniel's mind was sharp. He knew that to challenge Olivia effectively, he needed more than courage. He needed leverage. He opened his old notebook, the one he had carried through years of struggle and sacrifice. Pages filled with scribbles, financial notes, and personal reminders stared back at him. Amid the clutter, one name leapt out. Harrison Kane. Olivia's former mentor, and the only man who had truly shaped the ruthless CEO she had become. Kane had retired quietly years ago, and in the world of finance, the whispers suggested he held secrets that even the Sterling Corporation dared not mention. Daniel didn't hesitate. He tapped into a network he had quietly maintained, calling in favors from old colleagues, investors, and even acquaintances in the tech world. By the next morning, he had pieced together something extraordinary. Kane had invested in a private venture that Olivia had publicly denied any involvement with. If exposed, the venture could compromise her reputation, shake investor confidence, and put her in a position where she couldn't attack Daniel without facing consequences herself. Armed with this knowledge, Daniel felt a surge of empowerment, unlike anything he had experienced before. For the first time, he realized he wasn't just a single father fighting for dignity. He was a player on the same battlefield as the billionaire CEO. The next day, he requested a private meeting with Olivia, choosing the neutral ground of a conference room in a boutique co-working space downtown. The rain had stopped, leaving the city streets glistening under the soft morning sun. Olivia arrived promptly, her presence commanding attention. Her platinum hair was pulled into a sleek ponytail, and her red blazer accentuated the sharp lines of her confident posture. She didn't smile. She never smiled. Daniel rose to greet her, extending a hand, his voice calm but resolute. "Olivia, I think it's time we speak openly. No games, no mockery, just the truth." Olivia's eyebrows arched, a flicker of curiosity or perhaps challenge crossing her sharp features. "Mr. Carter, I admire your audacity. But do you really think you can sit here and play in the big leagues?" Daniel took a deep breath, meeting her icy gaze. "I don't just want to play, Olivia. I want to change the rules. And I know something that even you can't ignore." He slid a folder across the table. Olivia's eyes narrowed as she opened it, her usual cool demeanor faltering ever so slightly. The evidence was meticulous. Transaction records, internal communications, and dated contracts connecting Kane's venture to her public statements. The revelation was damning. For the first time, Olivia said nothing. Her lips pressed into a thin line, her hands gripping the edge of the table. The room was thick with tension, as if time itself had paused. Daniel watched her closely, sensing that the balance of power had subtly shifted. Finally, she leaned back, exhaling sharply. "Impressive," she admitted, her voice a whisper of acknowledgement rather than defeat. "You're smarter than I gave you credit for." Daniel allowed himself a small, controlled smile. "It's not about credit, Olivia. It's about fairness. About knowing that sometimes the underdog can survive and even win." The meeting ended without a declaration of victory, but both understood that the battlefield had changed. Daniel now held a weapon not of malice, but of truth. Olivia, for all her brilliance and ruthlessness, was suddenly calculating her next move with caution. As Daniel walked out into the now clear streets, the city skyline reflecting in the puddles at his feet, he felt an unfamiliar surge of hope. The war was far from over, but for the first time, he knew he had an edge. And Olivia Sterling, the cold, untouchable billionaire CEO, had finally met someone who could challenge her. The boardroom of Sterling Corporation was vast, almost intimidating, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of Manhattan's skyline. The sun had dipped low, casting long golden streaks across the polished oak floor. Daniel stood just inside the doorway, his posture calm, almost casual. Yet every muscle in his body hummed with controlled tension. Today wasn't just another meeting. It was a confrontation that could redefine everything between him and Olivia. Olivia entered from the far end, flanked by her executive team. Her heels clicked sharply against the floor, echoing with authority. The room went silent as she approached the center, her platinum hair shining under the ambient light, her red blazer impeccable, her piercing blue eyes locking onto Daniel like a predator sizing up prey. "Daniel Carter," she said, her voice icy but controlled. "I hear you have something to say." Daniel nodded, stepping forward. "I do. And I'd appreciate it if you listened first." Without interruption. A ripple of surprise ran through the executives. They had seen Olivia handle negotiations, conflicts, and boardroom wars, but never like this. Never had someone addressed her without flinching. Daniel placed the folder he had prepared neatly on the conference table, pushing it toward her. Olivia's eyes flicked to it, and she hesitated just for a moment, but it was enough. Enough for Daniel to feel the first tremor in her otherwise unshakable armor. Inside the folder were the records, carefully compiled. Evidence of Kane's hidden venture, internal memos showing Olivia's deliberate obfuscation, and financial ties that contradicted her public statements. Every page was precise, leaving no room for doubt. "I know what you've done, Olivia," Daniel said steadily, his gaze unwavering. "You've built an empire on brilliance, but even the brightest towers can crumble when the foundations are flawed. This is one of those cracks." Olivia's lips pressed into a thin line. She didn't speak, but her jaw tightened, the only visible sign of tension. The board members shifted uncomfortably, sensing that this wasn't a typical confrontation. It was a challenge of intellect, of courage, of moral ground. Daniel continued, his voice calm but insistent. "You mocked me because I'm a single dad. Because I came from nothing. But I've learned something you seem to have forgotten. Intelligence isn't the only currency in this world. Perseverance, integrity, and knowing the truth, those matter too. And today, I'm asking for fairness." The room was silent, except for the faint hum of the city beyond the glass walls. Olivia finally looked up from the folder, her blue eyes narrowing, sharp and calculating. "You've done your homework," she said slowly, almost approvingly. "I'll give you that. But do you really think exposing this will change anything? I built this company with my own hands. I don't lose to threats." Daniel smiled, not smugly, but with a quiet confidence. "It's not a threat, it's an opportunity. For you, for me, for everyone who deserves honesty in this empire you've built. You can continue to fight alone. Or you can recognize that even the strongest need balance. Even the coldest need to see truth." For the first time, Olivia's demeanor softened not completely, but just enough to reveal vulnerability. She leaned back in her chair, studying him, measuring him. The air crackled with tension, charged not just with power but with mutual recognition. Two worlds had collided. The ruthless brilliance of a billionaire CEO and the unwavering courage of a single dad who refused to be underestimated. A faint smile appeared on Olivia's face. Almost imperceptible, but enough to make Daniel notice. "Perhaps you've surprised me, Mr. Carter. Perhaps you're not just surviving in this world. Perhaps you're learning to play it on your own terms." Daniel met her gaze steadily. "I don't want to play your game, Olivia. I want to change it. And I think, deep down, that it's time for a change too." The executives shifted again, whispering among themselves, sensing that this confrontation was not just a professional reckoning, it was personal, profound, and unprecedented. Olivia closed the folder slowly, her fingers lingering on the edge. Her sharp eyes softened for just a moment, and Daniel knew that the balance had shifted. Not fully, not yet, but the battlefield had changed. For the first time, Olivia Sterling, the cold and untouchable billionaire CEO, had met someone who could challenge her not with wealth or power, but with truth, intelligence, and unshakable courage. And Daniel Carter, the single dad everyone had underestimated, had finally made her pause. The office was quieter than usual the next morning. The skyline of Manhattan glowed faintly through the early haze, but inside Sterling Corporation, The atmosphere felt charged with an unusual sense of anticipation. Daniel arrived with Lily in tow, her tiny hand holding his firmly. The little girl's eyes sparkled with curiosity, and she whispered, "Daddy, is she mad at you?" Daniel glanced down at her and smiled softly. "Not anymore, pumpkin. Things are changing." Upstairs, Olivia Sterling was reviewing the documents again. The boardroom confrontation from the previous day replayed in her mind with uncanny clarity. For the first time in years, she felt unsettled. She prided herself on control, on detachment, on projecting strength. But Daniel's calm defiance and unwavering integrity had shifted something within her. She straightened her red blazer and walked toward the conference room, where Daniel was waiting. "I assume you didn't come here to gloat," she said, her voice measured but carrying a hint of amusement. Daniel shook his head. "I came because I believe in what's right. And because, sometimes, the strongest people need to be reminded of who they really are." Olivia raised an eyebrow. "Is this one of your lessons, Mr. Carter?" He smiled faintly. "Consider it a reminder that even empires are built on trust and honesty, not just power and fear." She paused, studying him. Her eyes softened for a brief, fleeting moment before the mask of the ruthless CEO returned. "You're unusual," she said. "Most people either bow or run. You stand." Daniel shrugged. "I'm not most people, and I have something far more important than fear or ambition to protect." He glanced down at Lily, who waved shyly from behind his legs. For reasons she didn't fully understand, Olivia felt a pang of respect, and perhaps something more for this man who had nothing to prove yet everything to offer. She closed the folder, decisively, and gestured toward him. "All right, Daniel, you've made your point. The board will review the documents thoroughly, and any necessary adjustments will be made. You've done well." Daniel's lips quirked into a relieved smile. "Thank you, Olivia. That means more than you realize." She leaned back, crossing her arms but with a subtle relaxation in her posture. "Don't get too comfortable. You've challenged me, and I don't forget challenges easily." "I wouldn't want it any other way," Daniel replied. Over the next few weeks, a subtle shift occurred within Sterling Corporation. Decisions became more transparent, some policies were revised, and the employees noticed a change in the CEO's demeanor. Olivia was still sharp, still commanding, but there was a newfound respect for honesty and integrity, a respect that Daniel had quietly instilled. It wasn't just the company that changed. Olivia found herself seeking Daniel's counsel more often. Sometimes she asked questions. Other times she listened quietly as he spoke about life, family, and resilience. Daniel, for his part, was careful to maintain boundaries, but he couldn't ignore the growing connection between them. One afternoon, after a particularly long strategy meeting, Olivia lingered in the boardroom, and Daniel approached her. "You've done a lot in the past few weeks," he said. "Not just with the company, but with yourself." Olivia's lips curved into a faint, knowing smile. "I could say the same about you, Daniel. You've shown me that strength comes in more forms than I imagined." A quiet moment passed, heavy with unspoken words. The city hummed below, oblivious to the subtle, profound shift happening within the walls of Sterling Corporation. Finally, Olivia extended her hand not in a boardroom formality, but in genuine gesture. "Partners?" she asked. Not in business, not in strategy, but in acknowledging the balance they had discovered. A partnership, forged not from convenience, but from mutual respect and recognition of each other's strength. Daniel took her hand, a small smile spreading across his face. "Partners," he agreed. As they stood together, the golden light of late afternoon streaming through the windows, Daniel realized that his world had expanded in ways he hadn't dared to hope for. He wasn't just a single dad fighting for survival anymore. He had carved a place of respect, of equality, and perhaps even something more delicate, more profound, with a woman who had seemed untouchable, cold, and beyond reach. And Olivia Sterling, for all her brilliance and power, found herself recognizing that even a CEO could learn from someone who approached life not with domination, but with courage, heart, and unwavering integrity. For the first time in both of their lives, a new chapter had begun not just in business, but in trust, understanding, and the quiet promise of something more than ambition alone could ever achieve. Weeks turned into months, and the rhythm of life for Daniel, Lily, and Olivia slowly settled into a new, unexpected harmony. The boardroom battles and tense confrontations became stories of the past, replaced by quiet mornings, laughter, and subtle moments of connection that neither Daniel nor Olivia had anticipated. One sunny Saturday, Daniel took Lily to Central Park. She ran ahead, her small blonde hair catching the light as she squealed in delight, chasing after a bright red kite they had bought earlier. Daniel's eyes followed her, a warm smile tugging at his lips, when he felt a presence beside him. "Still teaching her the art of persistence, I see," Olivia said softly, her voice carrying the familiar mix of authority and unexpected warmth. She was dressed casually today, light blue blouse, dark jeans, but there was no mistaking the elegance in the way she carried herself. Daniel turned, meeting her gaze. Persistence, patience, and a little stubbornness. "She got that from me." Olivia chuckled, the sound light and genuine. "Or maybe from me," she teased. He raised an eyebrow, feigning surprise. "You think she takes after you?" "You'll see," Olivia said, her eyes softening as she watched Lily perform a daring jump to catch the kite's string. As Lily ran back toward them, beaming, Daniel knelt down to greet her, his hands gently steadying her. Olivia joined them, kneeling beside him, and for a moment, the three of them formed a quiet, unbroken circle, a portrait of unity that felt both fragile and profoundly solid. Later that evening, Daniel invited Olivia and Lily to his modest Brooklyn apartment for dinner. It wasn't luxurious, but it was warm, filled with the comforting smells of a simple home-cooked meal and the echoes of laughter. Olivia, accustomed to the sterile elegance of corporate boardrooms, found herself captivated by the authenticity of this space, the way light spilled through the curtains, the little drawings Lily had taped to the fridge, the worn cushions on the couch. Over dinner, they shared stories, jokes, and memories. Olivia talked about her childhood, the pressures of growing up in a wealthy family, and the loneliness that had shaped her. Daniel spoke of Lily's mother, of loss and resilience, and of the quiet triumphs of parenting alone. Through it all, the initial tension, the mockery, and the confrontations of their first meetings felt like distant echoes, replaced by a growing mutual respect and affection. As the night deepened, Olivia helped Lily into her pajamas and tucked her into bed. Daniel lingered by the door, hesitant, yet hopeful. Olivia turned to him, her eyes searching, her voice barely above a whisper. "Daniel, thank you, not just for yesterday or for the company, but for everything, for showing me a part of life I forgot existed." Daniel stepped closer, gently brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You've given me more than I can say, Olivia. You've reminded me that even people with everything can still learn from those who have little, but give it all." For a long moment, they simply stood there, the city's hum surrounding them. Two worlds converging, hearts gradually opening. And then, almost instinctively, they leaned closer. A soft, tentative kiss marking the beginning of a new chapter, one built not on power, ambition, or rivalry, but on trust, respect, and a shared sense of humanity. The next morning, the three of them sat on the apartment balcony, sipping coffee and watching the sun rise over the Brooklyn skyline. Lily held Olivia's hand in hers, laughter spilling freely as she recounted her dreams from the night before. Daniel wrapped an arm around Olivia, feeling the steady warmth of her presence. In that quiet, luminous moment, all the past battles, the mockery, and the confrontations seemed trivial. What remained was far stronger. The unspoken promise of protection, love, and partnership. Olivia Sterling, once a cold, untouchable CEO, had found a new form of strength, one tempered by vulnerability and connection. And Daniel Carter, once a single dad fighting against impossible odds, had discovered that even in the face of overwhelming power, the heart could triumph. They laughed together, cried together, and most importantly, moved forward together. The city stretched endlessly before them, full of challenges, opportunities, and dreams. But for the first time, Daniel, Olivia, and Lily knew that no matter what came next, they would face it as a family unexpected, imperfect, but unbreakably united. And in that unity, the cold walls of the past melted, leaving space for warmth, love, and a life neither of them could have imagined. But both had fought, and both had earned.